Hi, I'm Andrea Deschler,
And I'm Amanda Kyle.
and this is our last HOA, and we're talking about just kind of what we talked about throughout the whole semester and the movie Amazing Grace. So, the first question is, what doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate? Why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent?
Do you want to go or do you want me to start? I'm good with either.
You can go first.
Okay, sounds good. So what I put was I think that the doctrine in his heart was compassion and also humanity. So the reasons why I said those two things were he had this compassion on those affected by the slave trade, obviously, and he advocated because he had compassion and they were, the humanity part was that they were human beings, being treated horribly, like animals, basically, worse than animals.
Mhm.
Um, and the doctrine, and with the second part of that question, the doctrine of the family is vital to have in your heart. If we, as families, especially, like, don't advocate for this central unit, I guess, of society and of Heavenly Father's plan, then the rest of the world and Satan will continue to tear it apart unhindered. So, if we, as families and people who believe in Heavenly Father's plan, don't do anything, then Satan and the people working for him kind of win. Um, and just like Wilbur, you have to be both passionate and persistent because we are fighting such a hard battle where the opposition is also passionate and persistent. So it's you have to keep fighting even though sometimes it looks like you're not going to win because nobody else will do it if we don't.
For sure.
So
I definitely agree. I feel like he understood that we're human no matter really what race we are. I think for a lot of people it was the fact that because they were from Africa that they had to be treated differently because they weren't like us. And I think that Wilbur understood that that's not the case, that they are human beings, that they need to be treated with respect. And the only way to do that is to fight for them so that they can have the freedoms that we enjoy and what our forefathers fought for.
I really, when I watched the movie, was really surprised. I guess I've been fairly sheltered. I grew up in Southern California and in the church, whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
just can't even imagine, like, because of somebody's skin color, thinking that they're less of a human or a person. Like, to me, that just seems crazy. And I mean, I grew up in a different time than, civil rights movement and all that stuff, but to me, I just can't even believe that that's something that they would, think that they don't have like feelings or that they didn't. I think they mentioned in the video, like, they were saying that most of the African people don't care, like, don't mind or something like that because of the counts. I'm like, how can you treat a human that way and have them not care? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
So,
I think that I think that we are fighting our own battles. It may not be particularly about um, race, but it's about other things. And I think it's just we as human beings have a hard time accepting change, um,
right, definitely.
and that's having people from Africa or from any country coming over to this country and then being new here is different, and people don't like different, and that's why we have people advocating for other people because
Yeah.
they don't they don't have they don't have the help that they need to be able to live normal, healthy lives.
Definitely. I also thought it was interesting. I forget what his name was. He was the African American one that was like advocating with Wilbur, and he
Hmm.
was he was saying like he used to be a prince when he lived in Africa, basically, just like basically how Wilbur was living.
Yeah.
I can't imagine going from that sort of life, just almost just a regular person to being, enslaved and brought over on one of those slave ships. I can't even imagine how that would have felt for his, like, I would have been so angry, obviously, and I can't imagine how, like, that hurt his pride, too.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
I definitely agree with that, but I also think that I don't know if they chose to come to America or not. I don't know a lot about that time in history.
Mhm.
But if it was at a time where America looked good and looked like a place that they wanted to be, then I think that they were willing to do that. I just don't think that they understood the sacrifice that they were going to have to make to come here.
Right, exactly. That's so
And
true.
that it's a problem because we're not explaining exactly what's going on, and I don't think that that's fair because I think that they would have changed their minds if they really knew what was going to happen to them.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, okay, are you ready to go to the next one?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
I can go ahead and read it. How did Wilbur employ a theoretical, I have no idea how to say his name,
Bronfman.
yeah, approach to become a more effective advocate? Identify at least one thing in each system and be specific. So, you want me to go first? You want to go?
I can go first.
Okay.
I'm not really sure how to answer the second question, but for the first question, I feel when you think about an actor or an actress, they're very passionate and real and very convincing. Um, and in the case of being an advocate, you need to be those things to help people understand the problem. Because a lot of people didn't think that it was a problem that the people from Africa were being treated that way. Like it
Right.
was no big deal until something happens to them that's very similar to what's happening to the people of Africa or from any other country that people have come from. They don't see it as a problem until it either happens to them or they are thoroughly convinced that it's a problem and that it needs to be fixed. Um, and I guess for the second part of that question, um, as as a future parent, I hope to be able to teach my children about history and how it's important to have your own opinion and have your own beliefs, but being respectful of others. Um, and I think that that's part of it. And then being able to, as a parent, be part of the community and express that as well, or be part of a bigger organization so that it can reach the rest of the world. So that might be a leap, but that's just what I'm thinking.
No, that makes sense, definitely. What you were saying about how people don't really realize it's a problem earlier, or they don't until they see it themselves. It kind of reminded me in the video about how they pulled that boat up with like, kind of all the rich people, and then they were all like covering their noses because they could smell the smell of the boat, of death, basically, of what he was saying. And until they saw it, they were totally content to mistreat, those African American slaves and, um, be okay with slave trade. But until they saw it with their own eyes and smelled that smell and heard Wilbur talking about what he was talking about when he was up on the boat, it was like wasn't even happening. And I feel like that's like we can't live our life like that. We have to be informed. We have to know where we stand. And so I think this second part, I looked up this model, and it was the one with like microsystem, mesosystem, and all those. So I wrote down something for each of those. So I'll just go ahead and read what I wrote for each one.
Okay.
So with the first part also, I feel like Wilbur identified what each system was, that I'll name in a second, and then he worked through each of them to reach the audience that he needed to, so that he could further the cause of, abolishing the slave trade.
Mm.
So the first one was the microsystem, which is like your immediate system. Wilbur talked with his old preacher, his family members, his friend, the prime minister. I think his name was William Pitt. And so it was like they're just close, like your church, your family members, everything like that, and they helped him, advocate for this cause. The next system was the mesosystem, and I think one way that he had advocated in this particular system was with the relationship between him and William Pitt, the prime minister, and his connections. Like he kind of William became prime minister so that he could, make change and things like that in Parliament and whatever else. And I think that Wilbur's friendship with him and his relationship.
Amanda, where did you go? Amanda. Amanda. Amanda.